going to kickstart our afternoon post-lunch session with a very powerful speech. And the speaker, and I want you to guess which West Indian cricketer he looks like when he's going to come up on stage. And it's my absolute honor and privilege to introduce and welcome Mr. Chris Foster, CEO of the Omnicom Public Relations Group, where he leads over 5,000 professionals across 20 agencies that are PR, public affairs, policy, and specialty consulting firms in 6 continents. For over 2 decades, he has guided high-stakes campaigns for governments and global enterprises in defense, healthcare, energy, and technology, applying real-time analytics to anticipate risk and shape strategy. Author of Reputation Strategy and Analytics in a Hyper-Connected World, he serves on the board spanning arts, communications, higher education, public service, and workforce development, and he is the founding member of the Black CMO Executive Alliance. Chris holds a degree from Johns Hopkins University and University of Virginia. Thank you, Chris, for flying all the way from Washington, D.C. Ladies and gentlemen, let's bring down the roof for Chris.
Oh, well. All right, let's give it up for K-pop Demon Hunters. Just be honest, I saw some people tapping. Who was singing along silently? Maybe tapping their feet, doing a little dance in the chair. I know you were, Adrian. I saw that. All right, I love it. What's so fascinating about K-pop Demon Hunters is they sort of captured 3 pretty fantastic fandoms. The first was K-pop, right? Really conquered the world there. Anime and fantasy. It really is sort of like the best possible case scenario for PR practitioners. But when you think about the story is so simple, right? Be yourself, speak your truth. And that's what we're here to talk about today, storytelling. It really is, when you think about K-pop, a masterclass in storytelling. So I'm Chris Foster, I'm delighted to be here today. As that long introduction said, I'm the CEO of Omnicom Public Relations Group. I want to thank the team at Praxis for having me. But let's just dive in. When I think about storytelling, I want to start with creativity, all right? Creativity doesn't exist in conference rooms. It's not created in 15-minute increments as we bill hourly for clients, right? When you think about creativity, it's impacting storytelling in ways we haven't even imagined yet, right? So storytelling isn't just evolving. We've talked a lot about how storytelling is evolving and the impact of data and analytics and how we verify news and trust. That's all important, and that's all really, really important. But storytelling is being disrupted, right? And the shift isn't just in how we actually tell stories. It's who's allowed to tell them. And in a world where algorithms and channels sort of drive content that shows up on a mobile phone, it's the stories and the creativity that breaks through. I'll tell you a story, right? I'm telling a lot of stories today. I have the opportunity, and really it's a privilege, to go to Cannes Lion every year in the south of France. And I love it. I like the time because it's an opportunity for me to celebrate the creative, to really step back from the day-to-day and focus on the work. And those who work with me know the work binds us, right? The work is really what connects us. And in some cases, it allows us to work side by side with advertising agencies and media companies and production and content and all the things, right? So one of the things that struck me probably in the last 2 or 3 years, and I was a judge, I think maybe 4 years ago, was the fact that so many of the PR awards from bronze to silver to gold Grand Prix were submitted and won by the ad agencies. And I wondered why, right? Do they do creative differently or better than we do, right? So are we not creative as practitioners? And as you know, when we get there, we get asked all these questions, right, by the media. I want to show you a clip. I want to give a shout out to FCB. Anyone here from FCB? India? No? Okay, I mean, spectacular campaign, and I'm going to talk about it. I rarely promote other agencies' work, but I'm going to right now because I think you guys did a really nice job. Take a listen.
Welcome to the Indian Railways, my friends. The busiest public transit system in the world. Home to 24 million travelers every day.
It's too much people. We don't even have turnstiles. How can you check everyone?
And guess what? 41% of them don't pay for tickets.
That's a big financial problem for us.
But Indians blow $33 billion on tickets of another kind. Lottery tickets. Indian Railways presents Lucky Yatra, turning every train ticket into a lottery ticket, forever changing the world's biggest railway system.
Yeah, no. Grand Prix, enjoy it. What was fascinating for me, as you saw from the video, it wasn't like the most breakthrough creative, right, that had animation and music and all sorts of it. It wasn't that spectacular. Its brilliance was in the simplicity of the message. The brilliance was in the simplicity of the story. Lucky Yatra didn't invent a problem to solve, right? It identified a cultural pattern, right? It looked at what was typically thought of as a chore or a burden and turned it into an opportunity to win. It not just captured the moment, but also captured like the imagination, and it actually worked and it moved people. I think that's the power of storytelling, and that's the power of creative. So when we think about creativity, it's not always the beautiful objects. You know, the creativity oftentimes starts and exists in the strategy. And the strategy is what we own as practitioners. So think about that, we'll come back to that, all right? So let's take for a second. Think about the last story you worked on. Did it drive culture or coverage? Or both? Not a trick question, but both would be great if we can get there, right? When you really think about it, at the end of the day, we seek oftentimes to drive coverage because that's what our clients are asking us to do. But the power of stories have always built commerce. They've influenced and built culture and connection, all right? Coverage fades. Think about this, for example. The most frustrating thing, I think, for us as agency practitioners is, let's say we get a phenomenal story on the front page of the Times of India, and we're all excited, and it's Tuesday, and we feel great. What happens next? A week later, client's angry with us because something, and they want to know where the next coverage is, where the next story is. We do chase coverage, but I want us to think about differently. How do we tap into culture and create connections? Because connections last. They're much more enduring. And technology is a partner and should help us and aid us on that journey, right? Technology does shape how we tell stories, but it doesn't tell us why we tell the stories. We provide the why. That's what we do as practitioners in the business. But to think about technology, because there's a lot of conversation about we're all stressed and nervous about AI, it's going to take all our jobs and it's going to wreck the industry and all these things. And my thinking has evolved on AI. I went back and looked at over a couple hundred years. Look at how technology has shaped and informed and driven storytelling over the years, hundreds of years. PR didn't go away. Advertising didn't go away. It changed the way we practice. It changed the way we thought about the value and the role. It gave us different tools at our disposal to be more precise, to reach mass audiences, to use precision, to use technology. We've embraced technology, right? So from, you think about early newspapers to radio. Radio was amazing. I'm fascinated by radio because radio introduced music into storytelling. And you have the thing called the jingle. Right? Then you go to television. Imagine telling a story in 30-second spots. And you can use video and voice, and then you bring people into that. Direct mail and cable TV, search. Oh my gosh, if you guys remember, I'm old, but maybe early 2000s, this thing called social media, Arun. We thought it was going to disrupt PR forever. We were panicked. It didn't wreck our industry. It actually enhanced it. It changed we found different ways to communicate. Technology is an enabler. And we should lean into it, just like we should lean into AI. Sure, it'll change the way we practice a little bit. It'll change the way we do our jobs. It's not going to replace us in any meaningful way. I think that's what we should lean into that. And then that brings us to this moment we're in now. The moment we're in now is really complicated. It's this thing called omni-channel ecosystem. I'm not using omni-channel because it's like Omnicom, but it's omni-channel, right? Omni meaning many. Maybe a burst-in channel at some point, right? But omni-channel is fascinating to me because what's really happening now, and we are victim to it as well, the lines are blurring, for sure, between advertising, marketing, PR, right? And I don't think about this as a threat. I think about it as an opening. And I think finally, at this moment, we can take advantage of this and leverage this in a very dynamic way for PR. Advertising is important, right? Really important, big industry. They buy attention. And they've leaned into technology and analytics and data science to get more precise and to do more targeting and more dynamic attention buying. And it's a big industry and we love it. PR is different. We have to earn attention. We have to earn attention every day. And we should be using the same tools and resources and data to do that. But I'm not sure we always do. This is the opening for us. This is the opportunity. Right? Because we do, I believe, control a lot of the strategy. And that links back to the story. So when we really start to dive into it, let's talk about AI for a second. Because Amit said I had to talk about AI. And I love it. It's hard. I'm like the ninth speaker to talk about AI, so I hope I can share something different. I love AI, right? And I think it's actually quite dynamic, and it's actually changed the way I think about and practice communications. But let's be clear. AI can definitely tell a story, for sure. But AI is not a storyteller. And I think there's a really subtle difference when you start to think about that. The power of AI in storytelling is it's going to change the speed and the scale and, unfortunately, the scrutiny of our stories. Right? But we, all of us in the room and our colleagues around the world in the PR profession, we bring judgment and timing and cultural sensitivity and depth to storytelling. Only all of us in the room, the work we do, can make a narrative worth remembering. Right? And I think of storytelling and I think of AI as almost like a grand piano, right? It can play notes perfectly, but can it actually make music? Big difference. That's the power we possess. That's the power we control. We can make music. So let's go to the third chapter of this story, right? Let's talk about the story and the power of the story. Because I think this is an untapped, I think, an under-recognized tool that we have in our toolbox as practitioners. So you think about stories, they just don't explain strategy, right? They're how we execute it. Let me take a step back for a second. I'm wearing Nike brand Jordan shoes. Anyone else wearing Jordans out there? I know Arun is. Arun commented on my Jordans today. You ever think about the story and the strategy way back 30 years ago about brand Jordan? Nike was a struggling C-level shoe company, right? Out on the west coast of California, being beaten by Adidas and Converse. Couldn't even get a sponsorship, right? They were a super challenger brand. Then you get this dude named Michael Jordan who got cut from his high school basketball team, right? Went to a tier B market in Chicago to play hoops. At that time, it was New York, it was LA, it was Boston. What Nike did was something that was spectacular. What they saw in Jordan wasn't an athlete. They saw a story. They saw a story that would transcend athletics and basketball. I didn't buy these shoes because I think I could play basketball like Michael Jordan. I bought these shoes. I want to be a part of history. I believe in the story. That story shaped the strategy for brand Jordan, and it's still relevant and dynamic, and they live it 30 years later. Which is why we talk about stories solve business problems. Think about Apple, right? Man, that could Apple. Apple was on death's door, right? Steve Jobs comes along. Simple concept. Nonconformist, I'm going to think differently. That was the narrative. So simple. Apple lived it. From the experience to the indigenous bars to the packaging, right? And so much so, Steve Jobs changed his title at Apple to Chief Storyteller. That was a strategy that was also a story. Stories survive news cycles, and they show up when we need them most, when your reputation's on the line. And stories are strategy in motion. There's tremendous power in the stories. If we're in PR, if you're in PR, we're not behind the scenes. We're behind the strategy. We don't often claim that space, right? And if we're behind the strategy, that gives us a different level of power and relevance for the work we do. I believe that when you think about the moment we're in, this is our moment. We're more than communicators, and we're more than PR professionals. We're architects of meaning. We don't just shape perception, we shape outcomes. Right? Our stories don't just inform or tell, they move people. A strategy without a story is irrelevant, and a story that's not believable isn't effective. So we need to tell believable stories that move people and change behavior. That's what we own, and that's what we control as practitioners. That's our power. So you take a few takeaways here. The relevance of stories in an age of AI, I think, is incredibly relevant. One, the most powerful ideas in culture start with us in PR strategy rooms. AI can certainly tell a story, but it's not a storyteller. And when done well and when done right, the story is the strategy. It's the North Star around which organizations and individuals march towards. And that's the power of storytelling, and that's what we control as practitioners. So thinking a little bit further on it, when your stories have clarity, you can be heard. When you have creativity, you're relevant. And you have consequence, you're powerful. We are powerful. And we are more powerful, I believe, than we actually realize. So with that, I believe, like K-pop demon hunters, right? This is our moment. I believe we should live the story and live the strategy because the story is the strategy. Thank you.
I can request you to take your seat while I invite Arun Sudhaman, CEO of the Promise Foundation, to have a conversation with Chris. Thanks.
This is Arun's fun part.
Always fun.
It's always fun, man. It's good to see you.
Always fun. First of all, these are AF1s. Just wanted to make that clear.
Oh my gosh. It was a good story though, was it?
Great. I'm very loyal to that story. Chris, that was really inspiring, I think. And I think for many people in this room, it's illuminating to see how stories can be tied to something bigger than just perhaps the everyday work and the everyday grind. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that I've always found interesting about you is, yes, you're number one on the PR Power List.
There's only one way to go from there for next year, by the way.
I'll
not be number one next year.
It's all downhill from here. You know, you oversee the biggest P&L, the biggest public relations P&L, currently 1.7 billion, soon to become 3.2.
3.4. But who's counting? I mean, you know.
3.4.
It's fine.
All right, good.
Yeah.
But you love the work.
Love the work.
And I think that's really interesting because I think something that unites the people that succeed in this industry is that love and passion for the work. It's not just about the numbers necessarily. But if the most powerful cultural ideas start in PR rooms, like you posited, how important is showcasing and perhaps even transforming the PR discipline's creative reputation in places like Cannes?
It's critically important, right? And I actually don't think we've showed up more year over year, which I think is good as PR firms and agencies. But I think we're underrepresented, and I don't think there's as much credit we get for the role we play in some of the awards, but I also don't think we're thinking about award-winning work, right? Every campaign, everything you do doesn't necessarily lend itself to awards, and you can be distracted by thinking about getting awards every day, but I do think there's so much good work that happens in PR agencies and firms, in conferences around the world that never make their way to a Cannes Lion. And I think we have to think differently. We have to change our relationship to the work. We have to celebrate the work. And I think that's an opportunity for our industry, and I don't think we do it as often. I think the marketers and the ad agencies do a much better job of it, as evidenced by the recognition they get. But 100%, and we're on that journey now at OPRG, and it's not just with the big networks. Public affairs firms, our crisis shops, all play a role in creativity in the work. So we're actually trying to find ways to introduce disciplines, multiple disciplines, which is the power of the network, earlier in the process, so we can get at different insights that'll just change our relationship to the work.
Okay. And another thing about you that I think is really interesting is that you spent several years in the management consultancy world.
I did.
Which could be a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But you know, that perspective I think it affords you is quite interesting. Now, from a competitive perspective, I think probably everyone in this room is aware that PR firms are now often up against creative agencies, or let's call them advertising agencies,
Sure.
because there's nothing not creative about PR agencies. You know, media agencies, digital shops, and of course now management consultancies as well. What would you say are the unique advantages of the public relations profession that you see today that people in this room should be focused on protecting and enhancing?
Oh, our relationship to earned. Period, end of story. You know, look, I think earned is making a comeback. I think it's more important now than ever. We had speakers talk about fake news and using data. So I think earned is key. And in fact, I missed earned media when I spent 6 years at a consulting shop. I mean, that's the part of the business that I kind of craved. I'd also say, going back to the presentation, if anyone remembers it, right? I do think the story is so much more powerful than we realize. And I don't think we own it as much as we should, and I don't think we make the connection to the story being the strategy. And you think about some of the most iconic brands, some of the best work, some of the, the most highly recognizable and admired companies, they live the story, and the story is the strategy every day. And I think that's what we own as PR shops. It's not in a manifesto, and I like ad in the creative shops. It's not in the manifesto, it's not in the creative objects, it's in the narrative, it's in the story. And I don't think we own that and think about that as powerful a tool as it should be.
So I can recall a period when public relations firms were quite seduced by the idea of not just owning earned, but driving paid as well.
Oh yeah.
How do you feel about that now? Because I mean, presumably you're also always playing in integrated agency teams. Do you want people to be as capable in paid as they are in earned, or is that something we leave to other firms?
Everyone knows that's a trick question for the portfolio I lead. We have to do it all, right? Fortunately or unfortunately, because I think more often than not, advertising networks are doing PR. Influencer has been an incredibly dynamic. It's not new to PR, but influencer marketing is newer. right, in the ad and media space. So I've got competition on advertising and media for influencer. We're doing, if being honest, we do paid amplification, which is advertising, right? So I think all of it's important, but it's how we link back to a strategy that's unique to the actual discipline and the craft, right? So I could do amplification, but my amplification or my paid, it's really not a strategy. It's not strategic. It's how I'm going to leverage multiple channels at my disposal, that omni-channel slide I showed, to cascade a message out. And I can do it broadly, and I can do it incredibly surgically. So I do think we have to do both as practitioners. And when I think about the OPRG portfolio, we have all of it, right? We do some amplification from the large networks, but work we do in political campaigns oftentimes is a lot of paid media. But it's so much driven by a campaign strategy, which is a narrative.
Yeah. There's perhaps less value in being a B or C tier paid media agency than being an A tier earned agency.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, so another crucial transformative influence you discussed is AI. You said you're a fan. It would have been interesting if you'd said you hate AI. That would have been.
I was scared of AI a couple of years ago when we were talking in Davos,
Okay.
but I got over that.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Your comments will probably have reassured many people in this room, because I think there is a certain amount of angst
Sure.
about the rise of artificial intelligence. But how do you see AI, whether it's generative or predictive, how do you see it changing the way firms work? Do you see new billing models emerging? Do you see, for example, more work being automated and perhaps a change in that kind of classic pyramid model of the public relations agency?
Yeah, look, here's what I'll say. I think the model has to change, right? And I think we finally have a forcing function for that, right? I mean, we've been using billability, utilization metrics probably since I got into this business 30 some odd years ago. Sure, it tells me something about my business, but it also tells me about my staff. But I think we need to imagine new models. I think part of the reason I'm so excited about the moment is it is forcing me and our agencies in the network to imagine different commercial models. We have to, right? I mean, think about you're in a crisis situation, right? If a client calls us in crisis, those who do crisis communication, I do a lot of it, they just want the pain to go away. I never get a question about a bill. We solve the problem, make the pain go well, we send an invoice, we move on, right? We need to move more to solving problems and being super clear on the problems we're solving. It's the brief behind the brief. I think we spend so much, we obsess over the words in a brief. Oftentimes, that's not always the problem that we're trying to solve. So we get tripped up on billing rates and all the things like that. So I do think we should move towards a value billing structure. We're not going to be able to do that at scale across all of our businesses, but we're experimenting with it. And it's easier to do, not easier, the business and the work allows us to do it more in the corporate PA space, but we're now starting to explore it in more traditional brand and consumer, which is where we have to get to, because that's still a big part of our business. So I think that's going to be important. How is AI changing the way we work? AI has been a great partner, right? AI helps me prep for conversations like this today. It helps me make connections to events in the past. So for me, I use it as a partner, and it's a partner for our agency, it's a partner for our clients. The side of AI that concerns me is that, unfortunately, with all the love for my clients and clients in the room, for clients and office procurement officers, AI equals savings, right? And AI equals efficiencies. So we're being pressured to dream up and create savings in an environment where there's it's a lot more margin pressure. We've not recovered from wage inflation coming out of COVID. So it's just a dynamic market. So for all those factors, we're having to think about the commercial model differently. But I do think AI, I think it's early to say it's going to take jobs away. That I'm not sure of. It will 100% take functions out of play, and it should. Some functions that we do can be automated, and that's great. That's called progress. And it's how we use the other time to practice communicate, which is what we should be focused on, and we should talk about. I find we're quite sheepish in the PR firm about bragging and boasting about the power of communications, right? I think we're the most powerful tool in a CEO's toolbox, personally. I believe I belong at every CEO or board table on the planet because of what I do as PR. I'm unapologetic about it. And I get those seats. And I would hope our practitioners believe in the craft and the trade and believe we've earned that seat as well.
I think you're preaching to the choir here.
We just have to sit in the seat.
Seeing a lot of nodding heads. We need that swagger. But you talked about AI as forcing change. You welcome that.
Yes, I
As
do.
someone who's been in the industry for a while, we're still using, in many cases, the same models and practices and processes that were in play 50 years ago. How ready is the industry for that change? Are you finding that your leadership, whether it's at the top or the middle or even junior executives, how difficult is it for them?
Man, it's like climbing Mount Everest, and here's why, right? As practitioners, we are so precious about the craft. And I talked a lot about it today. Oh, that, AI is not gonna replace this. But I'm not saying AI is bad, and I'm not saying I don't want it. I'm saying we need it. It's gonna accelerate change. It's gonna change the way we do. It's gonna allow us to do work more effectively with more precision. I think our problem, we have the technology and we have the data stack, we have the analytics. I think people are going to get in the way. And I think our industry, unfortunately, is going to lag behind other communications disciplines who have already surrendered to AI and technology. They've surrendered to it. The marketers and ad guys have surrendered to it. They say, oh, I got it. It's here. We're going to lean. They're leaning in. They're putting it into pitches and decks. They're being very transparent. We're not. So I worry that from a change management standpoint in an industry, we've got to catch up, right? Was the printing press a threat, right? Was social media a threat? Did it end up? It didn't. That's why I showed that hundreds of year timeline so that we can start to think differently about our relationship to technology and what it allows us to do, but what it doesn't allow us to do. This is still professional services. We're still consultants. So in that regard, I'm excited. But it will change jobs. It will change functions. I think there are jobs we haven't even imagined yet. One of the things that's interesting, and Amit told me we had a little more time, is what it's allowed me to do, because we're in this, we struggle with the hybrid work environment, and whether it's 3 days a week or 4 days a week or 2 days a week, whatever it may be. I worry about the culture and training the next generation of people. I know you have other questions, harder questions. I want to get this fast. What AI has allowed me to do is bring more digital natives who are so much more skilled in using the platform and the technology with some of the more senior folks who are not natives, and having them work together and almost reverse mentoring. That's actually changed the way we work in offices in a really cool kind of way. So again, I wouldn't have had that opportunity had I not leaned into AI. So we're trying to throw things on its head. We'll try some things, we'll make some mistakes, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think that spirit of experimentation is really important. No need to apologize, by the way, because it's actually given me a good way to move into the stuff that I think people also want to hear about.
Oh, good. So
yes, there's a big event on the horizon, as they say. I know I'm not allowed to call it a merger. The acquisition.
It is an acquisition, yeah.
Of Interpublic Group. So you've talked a little about how AI will change your agencies. How will this acquisition change Omnicom Public Relations Group firms? How will it change Interpublic Group PR firms?
Yeah, so here's what I'd say. I'm excited about the acquisition. I think there's been a lot of work that's been done to get to this point. I think the most unsatisfying part is for real regular practitioners, to some extent myself included, we just have to keep doing our jobs every day. We work the regulatory process. If you think about the story and why this is important for us, it's not about combining all these firms and being big and bigger. I don't ever lead with being big, right? Because my competitors use that to my disadvantage, right? So I have to watch that, right? I know you guys are out there doing that, which is cool. I respect that, right? But I'm bringing, I'm uniting, some of the most iconic, diverse, best-in-class capabilities to build a modern communication powerhouse. That's it. And if the staff and the clients, which they do believe that, it guides everything we do, from how I staff on jobs, how I recruit talent, how we think about projects. That's it. I've got the most dynamic data lake and incubator to imagine, innovate the future of our industry. And that's what's exciting about what we're doing. Now, am I going to trip up or make some mistakes? Absolutely, sure. But you guys who know me know I'm okay with that. I'm a learning CEO, and if I'm not, making some mistakes, I'm not pushing myself and my team's hard enough. But we'll get it right more than we'll get it wrong. And I think so far as we've been, the good news is I've been on this journey with OPRG for 5 years, and we took this disparate group of at the time maybe 13 or 14 agencies. Now we're 23, and we brought them together as a network, and it's working. So I think we have a playbook, and think about the businesses within IPG. I think Weber and the collective have a very dynamic, very strong business. I have a lot of respect and appreciation for them. I think Golan has been on a really good run as well. So I'm eager to find ways to partner, to support growth, support staff, and change the world, really.
Okay, and I think people want to know, will there be any changes to the agencies, particularly in Asia, but even beyond? Everyone's asking me. This is the question I get asked the most often. I don't know why people ask me, because I don't have any answers.
Because you're in the loop. That's why you're in the loop.
I'm not sure I am, but I don't have any answers. But people want to know, will there be mergers? Will there be consolidation? Is there anything you can say now?
Listen, I'd speak generally, right? If anytime you bring these large networks together, you have to rationalize, you have to rationalize the portfolio, right? Because you're really trying to give, the agencies a chance to compete differently. You're trying to get, leverage capabilities to get scale. You're really trying to allow, there are some growth markets that we really haven't been able to prosecute as directly as OPRG, and now we can if this acquisition goes through. I'm very bullish on APAC, one of the reasons why I'm here. I think India is a growth market for sure for us, and I want to do more in India. I think China and mainland in particular, I think, as you and I have talked about, is really important. Singapore probably a little bit over Hong Kong, the Middle East. So we will definitely be, I think you'll see an increased presence for sure from us here relative to, the media, the news always wants to try to trick me into saying I'm going to sort of shrink agencies or consolidate them. There's going to be some surprises, some curves, but the objective is to find ways to drive growth, to support the career tracks and the talent journey. And if I take care of our people, they'll take care of our clients. And the pressure on our clients today is so much more than we've seen in the past. So if I can bring a network together of dynamic capabilities to do better work for clients, I'm all in. And then as far as the other things I'll do, I mean, you guys, you'll hear it and see about it, and I'll probably get beaten up over it, but eventually it'll all work out.
No tricks, I promise.
I tried.
You talked about margins being under pressure.
Yeah.
Growth has been hard. I think everyone here knows it's although in India it's been much more positive, but in general it's been a tough market.
Tough market.
Particularly at the bigger end of the scale.
Yeah.
So can PR firms be too big to thrive?
That's a great question. Here's what I would say, and I was having this conversation last night with a new friend, Adrian. I'll call you out. There is no, and maybe I get to debate this with my colleague. There's no billion-dollar agency, right? There are billion-dollar holding companies, right? If you think about Edelman, I have a tremendous amount of appreciation and respect for Edelman, as I do for Burson and what Corey's trying to do, as I do for what Susan's doing, at Weber. But when you get over about $500 or $600 million, you've got a couple conflict shops and you get some specialty capabilities. It's just, it's not too big to grow, but growth looks different, right? Growth's going to look different if you're a $600 million firm versus a $100 million firm. A $100 million firm, 10% growth is $10 million. That's hard, but it's not 160 million net new that you have to achieve if you're a $1.6 billion network. That's tough. So I do think you have to think differently about the capabilities, differently about the pricing models. You have to think differently about, your relationship to paid. Paid becomes, sort of a blessing and a curse, right? Because it can throw margins up. and revenue up, but it's also a little less predictable. So I don't think they're too big to succeed. Growth looks differently. Culture becomes harder to maintain, right? It puts a lot more pressure, I think, on local market leaders, country managers, GMs, which I'm a big fan of, right? I do think there's something very specific about country manager leadership and local market leadership, and I'd like to see more of that, truthfully. So there's probably breaking news for the OPRG people. I guess I'm going to hear about that when I get back to the States. But I think that's important. But no, I think they'll find ways to grow, but it can look different.
Yeah, okay. No, I think it's a really interesting observation because I think there's always this obsession with being bigger. And, maybe in a business like public relations, it doesn't automatically equal the best model necessarily.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. And again, like I said, I mean, I stepped into a big network when I was recruited and I took on the job as CEO, but I never led with big. And now that we're bigger, I get why, our competition in the industry may call question to it. I get it, and I would do the same thing. I did the same thing, right, when Burst and H&K came together. But I do think if you think about what big allows me to do, I think that's the story. Right? What is large? And it's the diversity of the talent, diversity of the capabilities. It's the experimentation that is important, that should be expected from large. I think we have a responsibility as large networks to invest in AI, to invest in new technologies, to create thought leadership, and to bring others along. So I feel a deep honor and responsibility to do that, and I think that's what I'll do.
Okay, final question. If the story is the strategy, what is the story that is driving OPRG's evolution, the acquisition, and its ultimate progress?
I think it's about unifying diverse and world-class capabilities to create a modern powerhouse communications network. That's it.
Okay.
And when we do that, as we do that, that'll be the North Star. It'll drive how we think about talent. It'll drive how we think about the work. And it'll drive the behaviors, which are even more important for how staff interact across OPRG and hopefully, if successful, IPG.
All right. Well, good luck, Chris. It's going to be interesting, that's for sure.
Oh, that doesn't even sound encouraging. Well, good luck, fella. We'll see where you are in a year. I mean, I don't know. You guys should read Arun's article when I took the OPRG job. He was the most honest in the trades and said, I don't know, man, if this guy can pull this off, we'll see. It took him 3 years before he wrote a follow-up story.
Hey, you're still there. That's the ultimate measure of success.
I appreciate the opportunity. Will you take any questions, or are we going to just go?
I mean, we can
Ahmed,
take
are we
one
done?
or two if you want.
Two or three questions? Cool.
Sure.
Now working? There we go.
There you go, my friend.
Thank you. Love the talk.
Thanks.
Didn't love that you did K-pop Demon Hunters and I did Star Wars. That's seriously deep to me. Thanks for that. Really touching.
That's beautiful.
You kind of talked a little bit about this on APAC. I think our industry, in a way, still has a superpower, which is the US, just in terms of the scale. Outside our industry, in the real world, obviously that's changing. We see the rise of China, rise of India, all sorts of other factors. Fair to expect a similar change probably within our industry, just demographically that's likely to happen. How do you think we need to retool as agencies as that shift happens, especially given geopolitical sensitivities that are going to remain, and personnel sensitivities, but even just structurally as well? How different are we going to look in a few years?
No, I love that you asked the question. It's really, really important. I think our colleagues outside of the public affairs space in North America, our colleagues in state capitals and countries around the world have to educate some North American and US leadership on the implications of geopolitics. I think because truthfully, and I was talking to a group of CEOs in the last month, and I said, listen, if you're a CEO today, you need a national, foreign affairs council, at your disposal, because the politics around markets and market entry is so complicated, right? But to understand what the impacts of trade policy, I don't talk about tariffs, because tariffs are a tool of trade policy. So you think about trade policy in India, sure, I can read about it, but it's not unless I talk to Amit and you and others who are here, hey, what does this mean for you in the market? Which will inform how I think about managing and counseling clients, right? We brought a delegation of Chinese scholars and diplomats to our offices in New York in January for that very purpose, right? So we have to be more curious. We have to make connections for ourselves, and that's where I need the help of my colleagues outside the US. I think there's a US bubble and sort of think about the world through the US eyes if you're from there. Those days are over. If you keep thinking that way, cool, do that because it's going to give me a competitive advantage. I'm thinking about the world, and I'm thinking about geopolitics as an opportunity. If you think about some of these incredibly complex conflicts, we could be sitting on the largest infrastructure, rebuild in Ukraine in modern history since World War II. It's fascinating. There's a role that we can play at that. So we have to, and that's not the end game, but we just have to think like, what are we thinking about? And that's where I think we need help from everyone in the room, for sure. I also think growth is harder to get out of North America, right? It is tougher to get out of North America. I think our wage inflation coming out of COVID is so high. And we thought the market would reset. The market has not reset. This is the market. We also have tensions between labor and management. We see it in agencies. So I'm looking certainly to find growth in North America, but I'm looking outside as well for catalysts for growth. And I think we'll be well positioned to do that. So I think this is a moment, not just for the US, but I think ex-US. Those of you who have big networks in APAC, run to that, right? Run to that, but make sure you've got coverage in the big hubs because we're going to need it. And we've spent a lot of COVID reimagining globalization. Well, now we have to reimagine, not just on the product and supply chain resilience side, we have to reimagine globalizations in the context of how we practice communications.
We have one more question, Nitin.
So I can go on. Amit's got to say, don't ever give me more time. I love chatting about this industry. I love this industry.
Oh, we can chat later as well.
Yes, my friend.
Nitin Mantri, AVMD. Quick question. I'm going to come back to your early part of the presentation at Cannes, right? So I know I go to Cannes every year, meet some of the guys there, but I still feel we are underrepresented there, right? And I know we have to be there.
Where is this? In Cannes?
Cannes.
Yeah.
We are underrepresented there. We don't. PR industry in general doesn't win in the PR category either, right? So what do we do differently? Sometimes it's not our idea, sometimes it is our idea, but still we don't, is it presentation, is it merchandise, is it just showing up there? What is it going to take to change?
So it's really three things, and two are very practical and one we have to own. It's expensive, right? No doubt about it. It is cost prohibitive for a mid-size or small agency to spend 2 days at Cannes, let alone 5, right? So even if it were just OPRG alone at our size, we draft off large Omnicom for that, and I'm grateful for that. So one, it's just cost prohibitive. I would love, shout out to Simon. I think he's done a really nice job, but the cost is just so high, and I think that sort of immediately will take 80%, of firms for being on site at the thing, right? Second is if you wanna, there's a formula for winning a Cannes Lion. There's a formula, and we don't know that formula as PR firms, right? It was built in the creative and ad shops. We should learn from them, and I think we should not try to reinvent the wheel. And we lean into BBDO, DDB, OMC, every day to try to learn what that formula is, right? And I think that's important. And I think for smaller networks, you've got to find creative partners because I think there really is something in how they package and create the content, right? That's important. And I also think we have to look at the work differently, right? There's a new public affairs category, in Cannes Lions. It's not just around brand and consumer and the campaign where I, threw the Heineken bottle out of the helicopter. No, we've changed lives, we've saved lives. Healthcare is taking a different stage. So I think we have to think about the work differently. We have to believe in the value of the work, which is what we own, right? And I don't think we do that as much. And there is a road to Cannes, right? You've got other awards programs that you can test and learn, but I think we've got to get in it. And oftentimes we just feel like it's out of reach. We'll just deal with it. We'll let the moment pass. We've got to get in it. We've got to learn. We've got to make some mistakes. We've got to try differently. But I'd love more PR representation in Cannes Lion, and we have to find a way to make it affordable, but we should be there more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.